Hello and welcome to Home Media Minefield presents Let's See What's Out There, a weekly video stream and podcast currently focused on Marvel's What If series, which is available to watch on Disney+. Maybe we should have called ourselves What If We See What's Out There, but that wouldn't fit into LSWOT, so never mind that one. But welcome if you've not joined us before. We are tonight going to have a spoilerific conversation around episode 1, which is what if Captain Carter were the first Avenger, as well as discussing other parts of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, movies and TV shows. My name's Keith Isles. I'm an independent filmmaker and content creator and a lifelong fan and enthusiast of cinema and television. And for today's show, I am joined from different multiverses in alternate realities all over the place, a crew of What If Avengers. So first off, what if Bruce Banner wasn't Bruce Banner, but was actually my co-host of the Let's See What's Out There podcast? Welcome to the stream, Pete Mealy. How you doing, Pete?
Thank you. I'm great. How are you?
Pleased to be back after a little break.
I am indeed, yeah. Yeah. Oh,
And
great.
what if? Do you think you could replace Bruce Banner and be an
No.
alternate universe in the multiverse Hulk?
No, my secret is that I'm usually very happy.
That you're usually very happy. Okay, fair enough. So definitely not the Sulk or the Hulk or anything like that then. Goodo. Well, who else have we got? Because we've been looking. I've been exploring the multiverse and the different realities to try and find a crew, and a lot of the crew have wanted to come back from our discussions on Loki. So I have a what if Black Widow wasn't played by Scarlett Johansson, but what if Black Widow was actually played by filmmaker and documentarian Claire Bueno? Welcome, Claire.
How are you doing, guys? Do you know what? If you saw how poorly I act, you'll be glad that Black Widow is Scarlett Johansson, and they definitely cast the right person. I'll stick to making documentaries and interviewing people. I know my strengths.
But, we are talking about an alternate reality and another universe.
We are. So, I'm from the Ghostbusters universe.
You are indeed. You are totally from the Ghostbusters.
I'm even wearing the t-shirt.
Oh, look at that. Look at that. Cleaning up the town.
Shameless advertising.
Yeah, cleaning up the town. The making of Ghostbusters, available to buy on Blu-ray. We'll put a link in the show notes below. How about that? Can't get fairer than that.
Thank you.
So, more what ifs. So, what if Hawkeye wasn't Clint Barton at all, right? Because the next guest I have seen do a spot of archery, and he's actually pretty good. So, welcome back, filmmaker Clive Ashenden. There you go. Clive, I've seen you do a spot of archery, and if memory serves, you were actually quite good at it.
It's beginner's luck, I think that was, yeah. But no, I'd be up for being Hawkeye. That would be cool. It was always one of my favourite comics characters, so that would be cool. I think I could pull off the original like purple outfit with like the big H on the forehead. That's what you want. None of this, Jeremy Renner style costume. You want to go old school.
Give Clint Barton a run for his money. Absolutely.
That's right, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, listen, if any of you out there are watching this and joining us for the first time, welcome. Please do check out the content on the channel. As you probably gathered from the intro there, we have actually covered the other Marvel shows. This little side show started when WandaVision came out, and we've since done it for WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and Loki, before now getting into the animated world with What If. So please check out some of the other work there. Consider subscribing to the channel. Give this video a like if you're enjoying this. It is also available as a podcast as well on all good podcasting apps. And check out some of the other work. Consider subscribing to the channel, etc. And with that plug out the way, yes, we're talking about What If. So what we normally do on this is we just do a very, very simple, brief synopsis, and will obviously contain spoilers, and Pete is normally our man for doing that. So Pete, do you have a prepared statement?
I do.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, great. Okay, you guys. So, like, what if when Dr. Erskine said to Peggy Carter, wouldn't you be more comfortable up in the viewing room? She was all like, no. And then she and the Hydra guys are right next to the machine, right? And then before Steve can go in there, Peggy sees the Hydra guy messing with the lighter thing. And she's all like, no. And then the Hydra guys are all like, boom, boom. And then, you know, Steve gets shot and he falls down before he's all huge. And so then Peggy's all like, bang, 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 right? And she kills the Hydra guys because Steve's not there to stop her. And then Stark is all like, oh, I can't hold the power, Captain, right? And then Steve is all shot up. So then Peggy jumps into the machine and gets all super soldier, and then she's the captain now. And then she kicks ass because she was actually a soldier, and then Hydra has to summon a Kraken, and Peggy's all like, Steve, right? Let's dance on Friday. And then pushes the Kraken back into the Kraken portal, and then when she comes out of the portal, it's like 2010 or whatever, and Nick Fury and Hawkeye are all like, what? And she's all like, what? And it's super cool.
Excellent. You made that as exciting as the episode, which I appreciate.
You did actually.
Yeah.
And saved us at least like 25 minutes.
Exactly. Yeah. So no, that was great. Thank you, Pete. So of course we are, you know, this whole multiverse thing seems to be kind of the flavor of the month or the moment, doesn't it? Because whether we're talking about you know, Marvel or DC or even Star Trek, the multiverse and alternate realities and all of that sort of thing have sort of made it to film and television now. Obviously, this concept's been around for decades in literature and comic books and, you know, things of that nature. But, you know, in recent years, we have really sort of moved into this idea with film and television of the multiverse, and it allows us to ask this question, what if, which, let's be honest, that's something we all ask ourselves from time to time, me on a daily basis. You know, but I was just wondering from you guys, what was your sort of experience with this Marvel what if scenario prior to this show being announced? Had you read any of the comics? Are you familiar with the concept of this in Marvel Comics? Claire, let's start with you, because I know often you say that you're coming at it sort of fresh from the TV world, but is that the case with this as well?
Yeah, I know. I knew nothing about this until when you texted me earlier on today. And my sort of brother brought me up to speed with what was sort of going on with this. So this is completely fresh and new to me. I think we're in a kind of world where you're like, well, kind of why not give it a go? You know, they've got this something like a platform like Disney where they can create programming like this and nothing's really spoiling. They can kind of venture in and tell these kind of stories in a different way and not kind of worry too much to the success or failure financially, because it's more content, isn't it?
Yeah, well, absolutely. Yeah. There's no doubt about it. Disney definitely want us to continue subscribing to Disney Plus. But you know what?
They've got to give us a good reason to keep doing that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if they're gonna keep supplying us with content to watch, then that's absolutely fine. I mean, we even got, I don't know whether you guys saw it, but we got one of these behind the scenes, I think they call it Assembled, but one of these behind the scenes featurettes about Loki in the sort of interim that we had, and it was quite in-depth and comprehensive. So I always, it's like special features on physical media, but they've got it on the streaming platform, and I always kind of enjoy it when they do that. So absolutely, if they're going to keep providing content, then
was
why
that
not?
worth a watch? Was it? Because I didn't actually see that. I normally do tune into those kind of things.
Yeah, I would say, if anything, as you know, I didn't particularly enjoy Loki. There's no secret there. You can go back and listen to other episodes if you wanted to break that down. But I actually did find the behind the scenes somewhat comprehensive. I actually thought it was better than the one they had done for Falcon and the Winter Soldier, for example. You see a little bit more of the creative process. You see a lot of the behind the scenes, and they do really engage not just with the cast, but with the principal crew and the showrunners and that sort of thing. So it is quite a decent. It's about an hour long, and as I said, so far they have one for all of the shows. I thought it was worth a watch for sure.
Oh, okay, I'll tune into that then, Keith. Thank you.
Yeah. Clive, what about you? I suspect, knowing you, that you probably have had some experience with the What If comics from your past, but that's just me speculating. And if I've got it wrong, it just means I meant a Clive from another multiverse and
from another timeline.
Exactly.
Right. I'll be honest, I wasn't that familiar with the comics themselves. I knew of them, but when I was growing up, that wasn't one of the sort of Marvel comics which was like stocked in the newsagents. Over in the UK, because they were imports, you only get selected titles. Most of it was like Marvel UK stuff. So unless it was like, the second strip in the sort of Star Wars Weekly or or something like that, I was less likely to sort of encounter it. So it was only sort of later I became more aware that there was this whole sort of thing. I'm much more, I guess, I'm much more familiar with the DC Elseworlds line, which was this whole, which tend to be kind of longer, like one-shot stories. What if Batman became a vampire? That sort of thing, with like Red Rain and things and stories like that. And so I always really loved those, though. It was always that kind of, the idea that you could take a character that you knew and you could push them into a place where they would never go, because this is their IP, right? Their brand name. So you can't. But then, so you're saying, they couldn't do something like make Steve Rogers a Hydra agent. Only apparently they can now do that. Although I think they've since undone that because it was stupid. But yeah, no. Generally, they could do these out there things, and it was kind of. I always like the idea of it, because it's almost like that thing in the playground where you would argue with your friend about who would, what would happen if these two superheroes got in a fight, who would win, or what would happen if Spider-Man joined the Fantastic Four, what would happen if so and so turned evil, if Gwen Stacy hadn't died. you know, it's sort of, you can go down all these little rabbit holes, right? So yeah, and then there were all these sort of stupid kind of stories, you know, like what if I was sort of having a little scroll through some old what if type covers, and one of them was what if Daredevil's tailor was dishonest. So you have Daredevil bursting in on the Kingpin, and he's wearing like a plaid suit. Because obviously he's blind and wouldn't know. He goes, yeah, I want this really cool red suit, and the guy's going, oh, I haven't got any red. Yeah, he's, oh yeah, got plenty of really good red stuff. Yeah, don't worry about it. Thinking, you know, so yeah, or like, what if the Marvel bullpen were the Fantastic Four? You know, like these sort of like throwaway silly ones. So yeah.
So it was an opportunity to be a bit cruel as well. Then
I think so. Yeah, apparently.
But
yeah. So I mean, some of them, you know, I think there was always that. You know, I don't know if we've got any fans of Community, but there was in that show this whole thing about the darkest timeline. This sort of alternate version of all the characters where everything went super dark and wrong. And then that darkest timeline tries to invade the primary timeline. But anyway, that little. So I recommend that show, by the way, if you've not seen it. But often these stories would do that kind of thing. You know, what if during the Kree Skull War, you know, all the Avengers got killed? Mm-hmm. What would that then mean? You know, so it's sort of, you'd start with this super bleak premise, and then. And see just how bad things would get when our heroes weren't around to save us. So,
fine, that's cool. What about you, Pete? Where do you stand with this whole sort of speculative fiction? And were you a reader of these comics as a kid? I would say growing up, but as a kid.
Yeah. No, I never really read them. I think that I was aware of them, but they were. I don't know, sort of in that it was like always more fun to like have a conversation about it with your friends, because then the possibilities were always endless, right? And so I think we just would always sort of like talk about it more than read them. Yeah, I think that's safe to say.
Okay, and you know. Have you got any sort of particular thoughts on, you know, do you think this is a good form of entertainment to bring this sort of question into already established properties?
So I think that this is actually a really, really smart move for Marvel, because they are trying to, you know, like slowly coax us towards being ready for a new Iron Man, right? For a new Captain America. They are trying to lay the groundwork. You know, Arc 1 or whatever we want to call phases 1 through 3 were, I think, so popular, but you know, it's not sustainable. Like Robert Downey Jr. isn't going to do 30 movies, but you know, Marvel wants to keep going and keep tearing them out. So what are they going to do? They're going to need to introduce new people to play these characters, because they're not going to just run through the back catalog and, you know, pull out and say like, well, we're done with Iron Man now. We need to do other stuff, right? And so the way you do that is you branch off into alternate universes. You slowly start edging that door in, or edging that door open, so that you get us ready for a new Iron Man. Because I think if they just sort of came out and said like, hey, this is the new Iron Man, everyone would have been like, nah, forget it, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Not emotional journey with such.
Yeah, no, we'll dig into this for sure. I mean, from my point of view, with regards to familiarity with this, much like Clive, I was certainly familiar with the the Elseworlds concept that DC Comics would do, where they, like put Batman in the Wild West or in Victorian London, hunting Jack the Ripper, and all sorts of things like that. With the Marvel side, it's really weird. I've got this recollection of when I was very young, and as Clive rightly said, they used to kind of, we'd get sort of reprints and stuff over in the UK of some of the stories that would be sort of almost printed on kind of yellowy paper and put into, a number of issues put into a sort of the equivalent, I suppose, of a trade paperback these days. And I seem to have it in my head, although I can't remember any specifics at all. And I'm not sure I had the comic. I think it might have been a friend of mine. But there was one where it was a what if one of Peter Parker's best friends that happened to be in the lab got bitten by the radioactive spider instead of Peter Parker. And it went down this whole, alternate Spider-Man scenario. I've got sort of a vague recollection of that. I can't remember any of the details or what happened, but I was sort of from a very early age familiar with that sort of concept. And of course it's been done in science fiction in general quite a number of times, where we've looked at alternate realities and multiverses, and having fun with this sort of speculative what if, we got shows like Man in the High Castle, where it's like what if the Nazis won the war and all this sort of stuff. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's an interesting concept. And I found, we'll obviously dig into this, but I found this kind of a bit of a breath of fresh air in terms of enjoyment. But we will dig into that. Let's just have as we always do, a quick look at the credits for the main sort of creatives on this. So this episode was written by Ashley C. Bradley, who I guess is going to be the showrunner for this as well, and was directed by Brian Andrews. Just looking at some of their credits, obviously a lot of it is to do with animation, of course. But looking at AC Bradley's credits, she'd actually written a series, an episode of the TV series Arrow in her previous credits back in 2014. But since then has been involved writing Troll Hunters, Tales of Arcadia, and a film about that as well. So largely involved in that side of things. And then Brian Andrews has worked in the art department and has been involved in a lot of actual Marvel shows. He was in the art department on Endgame, Doctor Strange, for example. He's also worked heavily on the animation on Samurai Jack, and then TV series like Primal, he did the storyboards for. So it's always been sort of, he was a storyboard artist on Captain Marvel. So it's always been from that world, but they've got some impressive credits there, and I think they did a good job with this. It's interesting. Again, I'm interested in your thoughts, guys, on this. So Marvel have kind of, in some respects here, taken a leaf out of the Star Wars book, where for some years now we've had animated series and movies which are still part of the overall Star Wars canon. And this apparently is MCU canon, even though it's dealing with alternate realities and possibilities and multiverses. And I just wondered, how do you guys feel about the fact that they've sort of embraced animation now and brought that into the fold, and how does that sit with you guys? Do you mind if the shows are not all live action and we have animated shows like this? What do you think, Pete? What about, start with you?
Yeah, I got opinions. I actually think it's a great move for them. I'm not super familiar with the Star Wars animated series. I'd always heard that they were really good, but I just never got into them. I think that the Star Wars animated series had that very specific task of sort of filling in information where there was just too much that happened sort of in between 2 and 3. Is that right?
Yeah, well, I mean, there was the
Clone
Clone
Wars.
Wars, basically, so which we
Yeah.
didn't get too much of in the films. So, yeah,
Yeah.
they dedicated.
And I think it was really smart to use animation because, you know, the amount of the cost of you know, doing all of that live action with computer graphics was astronomical, right? And you can tell a good story and have a good visual representation with animation. And I think that, you know, to get real specific here, this first episode of What If did that perfectly, where they're telling us a story that we already know most of, right? And maybe I do have to like caveat everything I'm saying with Captain America: The Winter Soldier is like one of my top movies of all time, regardless of Marvel Universe, right? I watch that movie once a month, just because I love it. And so like this was like right in my wheelhouse. And so you know, what I loved about having it in animated was that they could do, you know, they could do frames that just sort of hinted at the larger movie so that you know it, but you didn't need to see it all again because it's already, you know, like for me, deeply ingrained in my mind. And so just sort of the echo of it was enough to convey the story and move this different story along. Yeah.
Cool. What about you, Claire? Have you got any strong feelings on sort of live action versus animation, or does it not matter to you if they're telling a good story?
Well, I mean, ultimately, it is about, you know, telling a good story, and you've got to want to sit and watch it and invest in the characters, whether they're animated or, you know, they're live action. I think for me, watching it and what you know, I suppose I like is the thought that, you know, these characters were, you know, animated anyway, but that, you know, in comic book animation. So now you're seeing, you know, we're using, you know, motion picture animation to portray a story, which I really liked. What I found myself thinking, and Clive may be able to sort of clarify this for me, was whether how close the animated characters are to the What If animations from the comic books. So that was something, you know, I think, you know, taking illustration and moving and making it into motion picture, I suppose. Yeah, I really liked. I think it's another clever way of storytelling, isn't it? Really. And particularly all the voices that we're used to as well. They, you know, they've brought back all the characters that we're used to hearing, and just seeing them in a different way.
Well,
so that kind of, I think they've got the opportunity to experiment there, haven't they?
Yeah, no, for sure, absolutely. Clive, what about you? Any sort of thoughts on that point?
Yeah, I think animation has like boundless possibilities, right? You can do so many things in animation you can't do with live action, whether that's for reasons of budget or whether that's because you're not necessarily bound by the laws of physics in the same way, whether it's because you're stylizing things or just drawing them in a certain way. I think, you know, you can do incredible things. So that in itself is exciting. Then you start sort of getting into the actual creative decisions, which I'm sure we will do, of how they've chosen to do this, right? But one thought I did have was who is this aimed at? You know, in terms of like, is this skewing younger than? It's aimed at Pete. Great.
Yeah.
I was thinking that perhaps it was skewing younger, but it may be just because the this first episode didn't go to any really dark places. It was quite sort of up, wasn't it? And you know, I had fantastic fun with it. But I did think, oh, okay. Well, this is this. I find it difficult to get a read on exactly, you know, whether the tone is going to change week to week, if you see what I mean, or whether it's going to be consistent, because because it appears the animation style is going to stay the same, which I feel is perhaps a lost opportunity. You know, they could have gone a more like Love and Robots route, where they, you know, I would love to see like a claymation, you know, Avengers, for instance, or, you know, something with, or even something like, you know, more like out there, like Ren and Stimpy style, if you can imagine, you know. So I feel like it has all these possibilities. I'm not anti animation. I haven't really delved into the Star Wars animation stuff. To be honest, I found some of that like a little bit like off-putting. It feels like you have to sort of have watched a lot of like other animated things in order to watch the one animated thing. So whereas this seems a bit more, well, maybe it's just because I've seen all the MCU movies and series, right? But it seems much more accessible in that way. So
maybe it is a tad more digestible for sure. You know, with the Star Wars stuff, it really is, you know, it really does, as Pete said, you know, it sort of fleshes out the gaps, and it's kind of not essential viewing, but it's compelling viewing if you are indeed a big fan. What I found quite interesting with what they did here is you know, this was only 30 minutes long, and it told a similar story to the first Avenger, which was a 2-hour movie. But because we were quite familiar with that movie, we were able to sort of mentally fill in the gaps. Yeah, and they sort of served us the highlights here. Yeah, I mean, I share your point. It is an opportunity maybe to try different animation styles. But with this one, I was kind of happy that they made it, you know, fit into the world. And of course, they took a lot of great care to not only sort of recreate whole scenes from Captain America, the First Avenger, only in animation, but they also mirrored, as we've got on the screen here, they sort of mirrored a lot of shots and montages and you know, photography straight out of the film. And I mean, you know, you look at those two next to one another, and okay, what one is animation, but it's pretty photorealistic when you look at it next to the scene from you know, Captain America, the First Avenger, with the Howling Commandos. Yeah, you know, I kind of like what they did. One also thing that I'm going to say, and I say it with care and caution, because you know, I don't want to, you know, come across like the sort of toxic white male, but one of the things I really was pleased that they did as well is with Agent Carter here. Yes, they made her obviously taller, as with Steve Rogers, and bigger, you know, through taking the serum. So the continuity with what had happened in Captain America was correct. But what I did like in the animation is they didn't take away the attractiveness of Hayley Atwell. And the reason I'm saying that right now is I was on a podcast where it was discussing, I only watched the first episode, but recently there's been this whole sequel reimagining of Masters of the Universe. And in that, they took the Teela character and obviously buffed her up, but they gave her like a sort of shaved head and sort of moved away from the if you like, the femininity of the character. And I'm sort of glad they could have easily gone that route here. But I've still felt like it was Peggy Carter we know from the MCU, not just because Hayley Atwell was doing the voice, but they kept the sort of physical likeness apart from the height and the larger build, but they sort of kept the look of the character the same. Do you see what I mean? Am I making sense here?
No, you're also, they've got to stay authentic with the period as well, and
Yes.
having androgynous looking women was not fitting with the period of time that we're talking about. So it's keeping that consistency, isn't it? And as a woman, I can say this: we should still be able to feel feminine and look feminine if we want to. We have a choice, and if you don't want to, that's great. That's your choice. But we all know the character and can visualize the way she is. So I think if you'd have given her a shaved head and things like that, it wouldn't be consistent with that period of time. It would completely take you out of the story. So yes. I think they struck the balance very well, because you also have to think, later on in the show, she's throwing people around and being very, very active. So you also have, to be convincing she's got a physical mass that you would believe that she could do that. And of course, like with the serum, that's what it does. So I think they've kept that balance and that consistency very well.
Yes. It's just me being obsessed with continuity, as always.
Yeah, I think
that's kind of how I mean it.
But their job is to pay that kind of attention to detail, because the fans are going to know, this, be it from the comics or watching the films, it's ingrained in so many of their fans' life, isn't it? So they've got to get it right.
Yeah, and I think they did, and I think there was some good moves here in terms of they got a majority of the voice cast. Bearing in mind these are all Hollywood actors, and they've got pretty good careers, but they got most of them back. I mean, we got obviously Hayley Atwell, which I think was essential for this. But we also got like Samuel L. Jackson and Jeremy Renner back to play their roles in this.
Toby Jones,
I know they were only in it.
Well,
yeah, they were only. We got Sebastian Stan there in the picture.
Yeah, we were only missing two.
Say again.
We're only missing two.
Yeah. So essentially,
Steve Rogers and Johann Schmidt.
Exactly. So Steve Rogers here is played by Josh Keaton, and I think he does actually a very convincing Chris Evans voice. I don't know whether you felt that, but I thought this guy sounds pretty much spot on to me. I didn't really have any sort of major issues with that.
I wondered if it was his brother while I was watching it, because Chris Evans' brother Scott Evans, I think, is also an actor.
Oh right, yeah.
Oh, right.
And so I thought, it was Scott. But
yeah. No, as I said, this dude's Josh Keaton did the voice there, and then of course we got Stanley Tucci came back as Abraham Erskine. We got Dominic Cooper comes back as Howard Stark. You were right. The Ross McQuand played the Red Skull on this, but interestingly, I know it was Hugo Weaving in Captain America: The First Avenger, but he didn't come back for Endgame. And the actor that played the Red Skull in Endgame was actually Ross McQuand. So they have kept sort of, if you like, some consistency there in the fact that he did the voice. And then we had a character, Colonel John Flynn, played by Bradley Whitford. And I believe that he was a character from the Peggy Carter, not Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Peggy Carter TV series. So they managed to get a character from that in there as well. But yeah, it's actually pretty cool. I mean, any thoughts? And of course, we get Jeffrey Wright doing the voiceover as the Watcher in this episode, and I'm guessing he's going to probably be the link through all of these episodes going forward, I'm guessing. But yeah, any thoughts on the the cast, the voice performances, and the way that these characters were animated?
I have some thoughts on the voice acting. I mean, I think on the one hand, it's one of your big selling points, right? Is like, on the whole, you've got the actual MCU actors here, right? So it gives it a veneer of kind of like, this is the genuine article,
Yeah,
if you see what I mean.
Feeling it,
Yeah, exactly. A Stanford. Yeah. So
approval,
yeah, on the one hand, it's like, oh, this is the proper thing. It's like watching, like a different, MCU movie, because you've got your real actors in it. On the other hand, these actors aren't voice actors, and I think, like, with some of them you could tell. So I felt like some of the voice performances were it came over a little bit flat, because they were underplaying. Because obviously, when you're acting, you can do things with your face, with your body. I mean, Keith, you're an actor. You tell us about this, right? So it's, you've got other tools to work with other than just how you're projecting your voice, and so they're relying a lot on the animation to sort of help that. So I felt with some of them it worked really well, others less well, if you see what I mean. So yeah, it didn't take me out of it. It didn't sort of stop me enjoying it. But when I watched it the second time, I was really going, yeah, that's why that didn't land quite for me. Like the attempts at humor were didn't really work, did they? Or at least they didn't for me. I don't know whether that was just scripting, whether it wasn't like a super witty script, or whether it's just that they felt this story didn't need that. I mean, obviously you don't have like a Tony Stark in there, giving you sort of like the sarcastic one-liners, but yeah. It didn't have that element. But on the other hand, it did have. I did think the Peggy Steve romance, where they flipped the dynamic, was really, really sweet and worked. So
yeah, I think that's a very fair point, and I find that quite interesting as well, because I actually think that the script, the writing of this, I think, is extremely good this episode. I mean, they managed to put a few in jokes and references in there, but they managed and a few lines that kind of mirror and repeat themselves from the first Avenger, but obviously a completely different story and spin on it. I'm wondering with regards to the voice acting, because I do know what you mean, and I'm not sure what obviously animation is quite a long process, production process, and I don't know whether, particularly the times we've been through, I'm not sure if this stuff was kind of, some of it was recorded separately and sent in, and whether or not, the actors each sort of just did their lines individually and sort of literally phoned it in, or whether or not they were directed and they, and they did do it in a sort of ensemble or group. I'm not sure. There are different ways of doing this in animated film, and that's definitely not one of the areas that I'm an expert in by any means. But I just wonder whether that may have had something to do with that, because I do know what you mean. Did anybody else feel that? Did anybody else feel that?
I wondered whether there was a little bit of a lip sync thing going on, and I wasn't quite sure whether it was all. It must have been in sync, but something didn't feel quite right for me. I'm not sure what it was, but I know what you're saying about like the animation, where you've got some forms of where you've got an actor in a booth and the director is feeding them the lines, and then they have to repeat phrase in different ways, and and with a different kind of emotional motivation. Or, you know, there are some animations that, you know, they do have the actors in the same room all bouncing off each other and, you know, and performing the dialogue and reacting to each other.
Yes,
I'm probably of the persuasion that this has been done in a, you know, in a room where they've just been responding to the director.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of feels more like that. It doesn't feel like a reactionary actor interaction. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Where they, you know, that you've got two actors sharing a scene. It doesn't feel like that to me. It does feel like the voice is being put to the animation.
Yes, exactly. It doesn't feel like it was done like a radio play type scenario.
Yeah. It hasn't got that kind of organic feel, does it?
No. Pete, what about you? Have you got any opinions or thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that just based on COVID times, like it's really rare nowadays to get everyone in the studio together or to sync everyone up over a Zoom call to do the recording. It's almost guaranteed that all these people were, you know, doing it in a separate room. I think I've given away that I am totally and madly in love with this episode. And so I did not have any complaints with the voice acting. You know, I think I was mildly disappointed not to get Chris Evans in there. But I thought that, you know, the guy who did it was great. It was fine. And I think that going back a step to, you know, I think they needed to have these characters come back and reprise their roles, you know, for the most part, just to help us with that transition, right? Like, I think the whole point of this series is Disney gearing us up for new people putting on these character mantles, and so this is step one of inching us into that. And you know, step two is going to be to have somebody new do the voice, and then we'll get to step four where it's somebody new in the role.
Yeah, no, that's good. I just looked up actually Josh Keaton's credits. You know, while you were mentioning that there, and his credits are literally. I mean, we were talking about, you know, different types of actors, and his is for voice acting. It's been in animation and video games, essentially, nearly all of his credits. So, you know, maybe that kind of leans to Clive's point a little bit in the fact that, you know, we were quite convinced that he was Steve Rogers, skinny Steve Rogers in this case. But we were quite convinced by that, and maybe, you know, maybe he was just more familiar with that process than some of the, if you like, better known screen actors. I think that's fair.
Oh, maybe
that's what you were getting at, Clive, right?
Maybe he wanted too much money.
Yeah. Well, I mean, these things, there are definitely a budget.
Chris Evans.
Yeah. I mean, even though animation in itself is a long process and an expensive process, you know, it would have certainly been hugely more expensive to try and do this in live action, you know.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, even the live action films, a massive portion of those are actually animated as well, although it's CGI, isn't it? It's visual effects animation, but but I mean, Pete's already alluded to the fact that he loved this episode. What about you guys? How do you feel? Clive, what's your overall thoughts on this episode?
My overall thoughts was I had a great time with it. It was kind of light. It was fun. It was frothy. It was you know, I thought the action worked very well. That was kind of the most successful kind of part animation wise for me. I liked all the kind of the bits where they're kind of recreating shots from the first Avenger, you know, but obviously slightly differently. So yeah, that was all good fun. The only bit that really surprised me in a good way, story wise, was the Steve becomes this proto Iron Man, right, as the
Yeah.
Hydra Stomper, which I thought was, was fantastic. This kind of, powered by the Tesseract suit that Howard Stark makes, and I thought that was just lovely. And it had a bit of like the Iron Giant feel, right, where she's like riding him into battle.
Yes.
And he's sort of flying along, and I enjoyed the section where they have because they've got to have a montage, right, as they say in Team America, right? The montage where she's basically biffing Nazis. I thought they I almost wanted a bit where she punched Hitler in the face, like Steve does, but obviously that wasn't the real Hitler, and she didn't do the USO show, so I understand why they didn't have it in there. But generally found it lots of fun. I mean, there was bits where you're like, they could have gone that way. I did think at one point, does Steve like when we had the train sequence and Steve sort of disappeared, I thought, then we flash forward and Steve becomes the Winter Soldier, and I thought that would be great. But they didn't go that way. They kept it light, and then
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean,
they did still manage to subvert the expectation, because I thought exactly the same as you in that moment. So and I certainly didn't expect to see a sort of proto World War II version of Iron Man. It's like like wow, okay. Yeah. What about you, Claire?
Yeah, no, I thoroughly enjoyed it, to be honest. It was very kind of easy to watch, wasn't it? It was fun, and me, I seem to harp on about lighting and stuff, but it just was beautifully animated. And again, not being a comic book expert, but I rather liked how it paid tipped his hat to kind of comic book animation with different, not kapow, but that kind of thing going on, that kind of theme. Very easy to watch, easy storyline, wasn't it? And it was a lot of fun. But I thought the animation was beautiful, and I'm somebody that Snow White takes a lot of beating in my book. And Disney did it first, so I think the animation was superb. I loved the way that they captured the emotion in the close-up with the eyes, and I thought that helped draw us all in as an audience and kind of connect to these characters, and then not be just animated. The eyes were animated, I suppose. But yeah, very, very enjoyable, easy to watch, and would you say fun for all the family? I don't have children, so.
Yeah, well, Pete.
My kids are on vacation this week with my wife, so I haven't asked them.
Yeah.
No, I think it's something you could sit and watch as there was a bit of violence in it. I don't know what you would show children and what you wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think it is interesting about what the sort of age and audience demographic is for this. But I think, I'm similar to Pete. My favorite of the now massively spanning Marvel Cinematic Universe does pretty much fall to the Captain America films and the character. That's my wheelhouse. I would say that, I guess, but there you go. But no, so I enjoyed that, and as I said, this was like a breath of fresh air, because I had 30 minutes of real fun with this, and it did surprise me in places, but it also delivered what I was expecting in other places. I really liked, I thought the style of animation was good enough that it was stylized, but still in some places felt almost photorealistic as well. It certainly captured the look and the essence of the characters.
Yeah, respectful to that era, wasn't it?
Yes, it was very respectful to the era. I particularly like the fact, me, I always like not only references to the other films and the material, but references outside of that. And the fact that the train that they hijacked was called Where Eagles Dare pleased me like you would not believe. Mission Where Eagles Dare, I just thought
the operation
was fantastic.
Place you're in a geek.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it just when you can reference something like that, a movie like that, that totally pleased the inner geek, as you said. And yeah, I thought it was really fun. I want to see more. I guess I've got a few silly nitpicks which I thought might be fun to end on. All right. They were more distractions that are probably just going to make me look ignorant, but it still kind of made me laugh. So to start with, I had problems over the title of this, because I was like, what if Captain Carter were the first Avenger? And I was thinking, is that grammatically correct? Should it be, what if Captain Carter was the first Avenger? Because, it's single. But then obviously I looked into it and realized that it is correct, obviously. I did think, is it that they all come from the West Country or something? So it's what if Captain Carter were the first Avenger? If Peggy Carter was that first Avenger, what would that mean then? Would that be different? I kind of thought that, but there was that, and then the other
thing. Jeffrey Wright should have done that accent, shouldn't he, as the Watcher?
Totally should have. But no, it is correct. But of course, it is grammatically correct. But of course, it did throw me for a second there. I'm not going to lie. And then the other thing, and I know that this is an argue point because there is a character called this, but she's called Captain Carter, which sort of makes sense. But because her shield and her costume, she was wearing the Union Jack. I was thinking, why is she not Captain Britain?
Yeah.
Did anyone else feel that?
I was thinking that.
Right? There is a Captain Britain. In fact, I believe she's referenced Captain Britain in the Avengers Endgame film. I believe there was a line that referenced that character when you see older Peggy Carter in 1970 or whatever it is in that film. But
there is a name drop.
Yeah. But that was one of two sort of, not nitpicks because they're not wrong, but things that pulled me out was, as I said, first the title. I did sort of sat there for, I was distracted for the first opening scene, thinking, were Captain America, is that right? Were the first Avenger? And so I was doing that, and then when she was named and she got the shield, I'm like, they've got the Union Jack on there, liking that. And I'm like, why is she not Captain Britain? Damn it.
It looked very cool, that shield and her outfit, I have to say.
Yeah, I know, I agree. I think the look was really cool and worked. And made sense.
And picking up on what Pete has said before as well, as a kind of diehard fan of the Captain America films. Again, I very much enjoyed them when I watched them, but that was ages ago, so I don't remember them as well as everybody else. And so to pick up on, for those that know the stories very well, it was easy to follow. But for somebody like me that had forgotten kind of like the thread, it was very easy to follow it. You weren't excluded because you don't know the films that well, which I thought was very, very good as well.
Yeah, I think they put it together well and told a good story. And I was sort of thinking this needs to be like 2 hours long, to get this, but that they truncated it in a way that kind of made sense and sort of filled in the gaps. And of course, I love the fact that she comes back in essentially like the beginning of the Avengers. You've almost got that. Whereas Nick Fury says, "Drop the spear" to Loki. Yeah, in this he says, drop the sword, right? Or drop the scepter, or whatever it was in.
It's a sword that she was fighting with.
Yeah, but she had the sword, exactly. She had the
Mm.
sword, but Loki had the scepter, didn't he, when he came through?
Weapon.
Sorry,
Pete.
Pete.
I think the Nick Fury movie in Avengers. Oh,
Yeah.
are you having trouble hearing me?
Yes, yeah, you froze for a sec. Sorry, you're back.
Am I back? Sorry.
You are.
Yeah.
I think the line in the Avengers is drop the weapon.
Okay.
Sorry.
So there you go. It works in both timelines. I like it. So yeah, so that was good. But yeah, I don't know what, because I didn't watch. Say again?
We're off to a good start.
Yes. Yeah, I think so. I don't know what's coming next because I purposely try not to look ahead. So yes.
I looked ahead. I got excited and I looked ahead.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And
well, I mean, do you want to come back next
wish I
week?
hadn't.
Do you want to come back next week to talk about it? It might be at a different time next week, but we'll figure it out.
Do you want to do a little bit of speculation before we go? I mean, not about what's going to be next week, because some of us you can look that up, but
you mean
I'm
where
not saying
it will go?
Yeah. I just said.
What if we do?
Sorry.
What if?
Sorry, no, you carry on, Clive.
Okay. No, I just had thoughts about the Watcher character, and because obviously at the moment he's just this kind of the narrator who sets everything up, and that's it really. And I wondered whether, as things go on, maybe not in this series, but maybe as it goes on, it might we might start to see the Watcher take more of a direct role in some of the stories. Whether he'll actually be given like a support, a role where he takes part in the story we're seeing, rather than just teeing it up in a sort of Rod Serling way. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember the Jim Henson series, The Storyteller. Do you remember that at all?
Do not.
It was you'd have John Hurt would come on in makeup as this kind of storyteller character, and then would talk, and then would go through a different kind of fairy tale each week, which we then see kind of done with kind of puppets and live actors. But as it went along, there were some stories where he told us the story about the time that he got involved in this tale, if you see what I mean. So we got, it was nice because you got to see our narrator actually, as a younger character involved in these kind of different adventures. So I wonder if that's an area they might go to in the future. And yeah, the only other thought was just around the press around this. I don't know if anyone's read anything, but the show creators seem to be quite up for the idea of bringing Captain Carter back at some point in the future. So we shall see.
Yeah, well, I'd be happy to see her back for sure.
Yeah, totally.
Any other?
Oh no, I wouldn't. No,
without spoilers. No. Okay.
No, I definitely couldn't predict anything. I don't know the world well enough.
Okay, Pete.
I think we're going to be opening that door, and I think that by the end of the series, we're going to see a radically different main character.
Okay.
So I think that they're gonna try to give us a totally new take on a character, to really start bringing in, I think that like this one, the first one, right, the change happened halfway through the movie that we're all aware of and we've seen, right? So that's a lot of that was baked in. I think that we'll get, somewhere like episode 6, 7, 8, we'll get one where the change was, before the character was born or something like that.
Right. Interesting. Okay. Well, I'm all up for this. I just think it's the multiverse does make anything possible, literally. And why not? We say, what if? Why not?
Yeah.
But I'm here next week as well. So yeah. Anyway, Claire, where can people find more of your work?
You can find me at www.premierscene.net. I interview new, emerging and seasoned film talent about the films that they're releasing. There's a recent interview is Boys from County Hell, which is an Irish vampire comedy that's in cinemas, in UK cinemas at the moment. Highly recommend that film. It's very funny, and we like to support a good horror film, don't we? So very good. And of course, I'm also the producer of Cleaning Up the Town, Remembering Ghostbusters, the definitive documentary on the making of Ghostbusters, which is on Blu-ray and can be found on Crackle in the United States.
Fabulous. Excellent. Clive, where can people find more of your work?
What if you wanted to watch some really good short films? Well, you could. You see what I did there? You could go to Vimeo and put in my name. There we go, Clive Ashenden, and you will find some of my most recent films as a director. So, yeah.
Fabulous. Thank you, Clive. Pete.
Please follow the Let's See What's Out There podcast, LSWOTcast, on all fine social medias. Also, you can email LSWOTcast@gmail.com with any feedback or thoughts.
Cool. Actually, have we checked that lately? That's a good point.
No, but
no,
that's not true.
Do that.
I have it on my phone. Yeah.
Cool. And obviously, if you're here watching this, you've already found the channel. Please check out some of the other work. As I said, there are video streams like this talking about different subjects, different movies, and some of the other Marvel shows. But there's also reviews on physical media, Blu-ray, 4K, DVD, etc. There's product unboxings, there's comparisons, and there's full-on reviews looking at picture, audio quality, and special features. So if physical media is your thing, check that out. There is actually one on Cleaning Up the Town, Remembering Ghostbusters. So if you want a full review of that and what's included on that Blu-ray, please check that out down below. If you want to see any of my other work, if you go to the other YouTube channel, which is British Isles, that's EYLES, as in my last name, you can see half a dozen short films that I directed there. What if I was a director in another timeline? But for now, that just leaves me.
You are a director, Keith.
There you go. But for now, that leaves me to just thank the guests for today. Thank you for watching this. Please share, like, do all of that stuff. And we will speak to you at the next Home Media Minefield. Let's see what's out there. What if you do? Check it out. Bye for now.
Bye.